One thing I forgot to mention, it's very important to keep this light directly in the center line over this gun because it throws shadows, and those shadows coming back, if it's too heavy on this side or that side, the shadows will mess with you. So you always have this centered up. I go over this stuff about every 2 or 3 guns I make because I never know who's watching this time that wasn't watching last time. I'm so cautious of this area because I've never made one of this type of stock before. I think I'm going too fast with that that Fordham tool. I think I'm going to slow down and get a rasp and a file and just do this by hand with a rasp because it's just you can walk off into quicksand before you know it when you're not on familiar territory. This would be a lot more comfortable if I put it down on its side, but I need to see both sides of it as I'm trying to do this. I don't like doing rough filing with all this stuff in the way, but for right now, I don't have a choice. I've got to get this worked in, and I can't cut this in until I get this shape done a little bit more. And this is totally foreign to me. I have to keep reminding myself, I'm not trying to fit my hand. I'm trying to fit a hand that's time and a half the size of mine. What I'm doing is this contour as it rolls this way and this way. Both of those are convex surfaces, and I'm just continuing that same roll. See, this is way too high right here. I gotta keep that little dot right there. That's my center line. I've got one still up on top of this comb. That'll give me enough room to sand off. I've got about 25 thousandths. That'll give me enough room to sand it off. Smooth that up and get those chisel marks out of there. I'm going to darken that center line dot. I could probably find it again just going to the middle of this groove here. That's probably within a few thousandths of being in the middle. Well, it's a very pleasant 10 degrees outside today. It's pretty nice in my shop. Days like this make me very thankful for this shop. Very, very grateful. that'll let me sand and do what I need to do with sandpaper. Alright, I'm taking a different approach on this bottom piece. It's so recessed down below the surface of the wood because I'm trying to make this up here beefier. And I talked to the owner of the gun, and he said that it would be okay if this was a little bit recessed. It's going to be pretty good back here in the back, pretty close. My lowest place in this whole bandsawed cut is right where these two pencil marks are. So I'm going to take this out, get rid of the metal so I don't scuff it. And I'm going to take a straight block and go from here to here and straight block this. And it'll have a slight convex to it. It'll be a slight dip. Right here is about the lowest part of the belly of the dip. And I'm going to straight block it, keeping these two pencil marks in mind. When I get down close to these, I'm going to put it all back together and see how far recessed I am. The worst thing is I could go below the surface of the metal. You don't do that. Being a little bit recessed on the metal below the wood is acceptable. It really is. Matter of fact, most gun stocks commercially made are quite a bit, the metal is quite a bit recessed. The wood is proud of it. Some say that it's to let the next refinisher sand the wood, the stock, and refinish it, and there's probably a valid argument for that, but it's also, in my opinion, the inability of machines to make something that has a perfect wood to metal fit. If this was just absolutely, you couldn't even feel the difference in wood and metal. CNC machines commercially made are just not set up to be able to do that. They would end up having the wood a little bit proud or a little bit recessed below the metal, and that would look bad. So they just leave about 20 thousandths, 30 thousandths sticking up to make it look like they did it on purpose, and they did. That's just my opinion. I can't prove that, but that's commonly acceptable with factory stocks, is for the wood to be proud. When I'm trying to do something this way, sanding a defect out or sanding down to a certain point, I don't just sand, like right here is my little pencil mark with this deep gouge. It's still there, barely. I don't just sit there and grind on it, because then you get a dip. I sand the whole thing, equal pressure, and I keep my eyes on that. And that achieves something called fairness. Being fair is an old boat building term from way back. It was that sense of going from the front of the bow all the way back to the stern with no waves and bumps and cavities or anything sticking out to obstruct the fluid motion of the boat through the water. I suppose there's a name for resistance to water, hydro something. But airplanes, when they started making airplanes, they used the same kind of ideology for aerodynamic ability. And there's a thing called, between the fuselage and the wing, there's a thing in there that smooths out that little crease, that little transition. It's called a fairing. They put fairings on race cars to increase the ability of that race car to slide through the air with no turbulence. And that's where the term fairing came from, was the fairness of a boat hull. The fairness was achieved by the same thing I'm doing right here, because this is not a straight plane. There's actually a convex going front to back. This is rounding up to the front. And so to achieve that, to make it smooth, This is the only way I know to do it. But I keep my eyes on that little defect, that little flaw, and it's almost gone. Matter of fact, it's so close to gone, I probably need to start using a finer grip. Because I don't want to take any more than I have to off of that little area. That was close from the wood to the bottom metal. That was really close to it. I've got a little recessed area right here, but I can roll that off a little tighter after I get this part done. This is the critical part around that bottom metal. And I have to put the whole gun together to check it, because the screws have to actually be to their torque before I know how this fits. It looks like I'm really close to there. I'll stick the screws in and see how it looks with pressure on it. That's really nice. I'll have to round this a little bit, just roll it down so there's not a sharp edge right there, but I can do that. From about here forward, it's got to be rounded just a touch. But I really like that. That'll work.